Thank you for being here. My name is Jason Olari, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Historical Society of Carroll County. We've got a great turnout. Some people are still coming in. Help yourself to refreshments. There's plenty over there, and of course there's drinks and coffee. I wanted to mention a few upcoming events on the Historical Society's calendar. On October 4th, we have a Carroll 250 event, Fall History Day at Exploration Commons at the library from 9 to 12 p.m. There'll be different historical organizations throughout the county there. It's several speakers. That's on October 4th. October 9th to the 13th, of course, many of you know this, the Vietnam Traveling Wall exhibit will be in New Windsor Fire Department. That's not a Historical Society event, but we advertise it as part of the 250 initiative. As you may know, the Historical Society is heading up Carroll 250, so we are part of the planning and promotion of any 250 related event throughout the county. So that's coming up, the Vietnam Traveling Wall exhibit, New Windsor Fire Department, 10 to 3, from October 9th to the 13th. October 16th, History Shaken and Stirred, Untold Ghost Stories of Carroll County will be at Covalent Spirits. Many of you have been to that event. It's fun, pretty informal event with about 5 speakers that last about 3 to 5 minutes, 6 to 8 p.m. on October 16th. And I really wanted to promote October 28th is the Historical Society's annual meeting of the membership. And we're going to have a great speaker coming from the Museum of the Shenandoah Valley. It's going to be at the Westminster Riding Club. Registration is required, 11:30 to 2, October 28th. And we are going to honor 4 extraordinary individuals that have been part of the Historical Society's history for decades. Commissioner Tom Gordon will be receiving the Historical Society's Distinguished Historian Award at the annual meeting. Anne and George Horvath, Distinguished Service Award, and Anne is here, and we are very thrilled to be honoring Anne and George. And then some of you know, Tim Kyle has been restoring Roop's Mill for a number of years. How many months now, Galen? He's been at it? About a year. So we have created a new award as part of our strategic plan, Carroll County Historic Preservation Award, and Tim Kyle will be winning that award for his historic preservation work at the mill. So we'll be honoring those individuals at the annual meeting on October 28th, and we hope you can make it. Although it is a members' annual meeting, anyone, member or non-member, can attend. So with that, I also want to acknowledge our sponsors. We have an anonymous sponsor today for today's talk, and also Barbara Alsh. Is Barbara here that we can say thank you to Barbara and that anonymous sponsor for today's talks? Thank you very much. So Caroline Babylon was born and raised in Westminster, 1972 graduate from Westminster High School. The year after Mr. Eaton he retired, okay. Attended Western Maryland College, married to Kevin Dayhoff, is here with us today, for 29 years. Had a career in banking, and her retirement job as director of the Carroll County Food Sunday. Can we have a warm round of applause for Caroline?
Well, thank you and welcome. I was also personal friends. Our family was personal friends of Mike's, which is somehow how I got this job. And I have to thank, so many people have written and talked about Mike that I just have to thank everybody who's added to that. Some of them are here, some of them are not. In the back, we've put a collection of some of the writings and pictures from all his things. But now, before we get into this, we got to get one thing out of the way. Everybody who had Mike for senior English, please stand up. There you go. Now join me here. everything sweepable, of which this is the bar. Somebody tried to fire the tender crop and the young son. Now you all knew that. I didn't have it. To me it sounds like what's grilling is the sliding coat. There's the other half if you needed to see it. So everybody knew the prologue to Canterbury Tales. Mike was born in Cambridge, Maryland. He actually had 4 siblings, and we knew and saw a few of those, although they died earlier. He was the youngest. His sister Henrietta outlived him. And his dad ran a confectionery store, so he worked in that store as a youth. He went to the Centerville Public School, graduated in 22, so that was more than 100 years ago already. He came to Western Maryland, lucky of Westminster. He won quite a number of awards at graduation, and then was honored in 1985 for meritorious service for his work as an alum. He went to Columbia, he went to New York City and got his master's. What brought him back to Westminster is a curiosity to me, because he loved New York City, he loved the arts and the drama. So luckily he came back to Carroll County, but he got put in Union Bridge the first year. Elmer Wolf, and it was the first year of Elmer Wolf High School. A little piece of history here, Elmer Wolf was working on building that school. He was the principal of the pre-existing Union Bridge School, and he died that spring, so they named the school that opened that fall after Elmer Wolf. So if any of you wondered where it got that name, that seems to be what I found. So he taught 1 year at Elmer Wolf in Union Bridge. Now, those of you who know Mike, remember, he did not drive. To the best of our knowledge, he never ever drove a car. He took the train to get to and from New York. He flew places, he went on cruises, but he didn't drive. So think of 1931, living in Union Bridge. How do you even get back and forth? I'm sure he roomed somewhere in Union Bridge for that year, to the best of my knowledge. And then for 3 years, he was out in Silver Run at Charles Carroll School, which looked something like this. I stole this out of a video before the school was torn down. But he was there 3 years. My mother, Evelyn Babylon, knew Mike very well also. And she thinks Irma Lawyer, who taught with him at Westminster High, may have been there at that time. But again, to the best of our knowledge, he had to live somewhere near Charles Carroll to get to school every day. And we know he got there, and we know he was there on time, and we know he stayed late. Finally, he came to Westminster. He was in the old, double old for all of us now, high school, the one on Center Street. And this image is before the 3rd floor was taken off. By the time he was there, the 3rd floor had been removed. It was a gym, and apparently it swayed in the wind. So they removed it, but the 2 stories are still standing on Center Street, and they have shops in the downstairs and apartments in the up. So 1935 was the last year of that school. So he was there when they moved to the new high school. Oops, sorry, we're going to talk about Hoffman's for a minute, because we were talking about where he lived and what he did. He lived in boarding houses most of his time. When he came to Westminster, right in that 1935 time frame, he moved to Hoffman's, which we know as Cockey's and is part now of the Historical Society property. This is about Hoffman's. Thelma Hoffman inherited the property from her parents, and she ran it as a boarding house. And I remember going there. Who else remembers going there? Yep. I remember the apple fritters and the corn fritters. I don't know about you. Apparently the fried chicken too. Okay? So we all have been there, or a lot of us. But Mike lived there, and he had a room on the 3rd floor, and we have renovated that room. I'll show you. We've made that a historical spot in Mike's memory. But Mike lived there, and I'm told he helped. Thelma wasn't always the best at the business end, and she'd get payment and pile it on the desk, and he'd been in a confectionery store, so he made it more orderly and helped out and such. But every meal there, big long table. And then when Thelma retired, she sold that, and that was in '69, so Mike was still teaching then, and she bought a house on West Green Street, and she and Mike lived there, and he was still the boarder. When Thelma passed, and I couldn't find that date, I suspect it was in the early '80s, her nieces inherited the house, and they let him live there as long as he took care of it. He took immaculate care of that house, and as I said, he even paved the driveway, and remember, he didn't drive. To the left of this picture, there's a patio, a raised porch, and it had gorgeous roses around it, which Kevin helped maintain, and Mike would sit out there and entertain people on the porch, and you could go, and there'd be 3 or 4 people there that he'd had as students who he was entertaining and meeting with. So he lived there until his death. He actually passed in that house. However, when they changed schools, and I suspect Galen told this story when he talked about the high school, and my dad was a student, Mike was a teacher. I think it was in November, according to this. They sent all the kids home. They told them, take everything you have home, leave it at home, and come in tomorrow. They had them go through the library and grab books and walk from Center Street to Longwell and carry the library over and install it. I think that would probably be child labor these days. So Westminster High opened, Mike was there. And in this picture, I think he's about 38 years old. So it's quiz time. And I'm ready. I have the card. Any of you that had Mike know these are the dreaded cards. He called on people based on how the cards shuffled. So it didn't matter if you were prepared or not prepared or wanted to share, your name had to come up. So Carroll Arbaugh. What was his room number?
137.
Oh. .106, and there he is sitting in his room. And he was apparently the only teacher in that room for the life of the high school. And you're like me, you remember him standing outside the room at room change time. In my day, Jim Barnes was out there with him. Doll Drenning was in that corridor, and I think Miss B. Miller was in that corner too. So all the old teachers were there, but he'd stand at that corner and watch classes change and make sure things were as they should be. Okay, Jennifer Munch. Monday is sacred for writing. Everybody wrote essays on Monday, and Mike graded all those essays and gave them back to you. And he remembered them. We have some memories that people wrote when we had the event in 2010 at the Historical Society, and I've heard at least 2 stories of where the younger sibling grabbed an essay that some older sibling had written, and he picked it up. He knew it had happened. Graham Davidson, The Road to Hell, there you go, is paved with good intentions. And one more, who do I have? Peggy Dean. This too, there you go, shall pass. Yep. He didn't get too overly excited about a lot of things because he knew that this too shall pass. That's it. And who remembers the vocabulary lessons? Yep, he was known for doing the vocabulary lessons. Oh, the interesting thing about these cards, and we struggled because everybody always says index cards. We have a sample of them from, I think it was 1948, framed over there. And these are actually bigger than what they were. I think they were probably palm cards, cue cards that actors would use, because they also were this color. They weren't white like a typical index card. But remember, he has that New York background. And I bet he went to New York because they're curved corners too, not straight cuts, so he wouldn't have made them. I think he bought them in New York, and they were cue cards that actors used. So everybody remembers. Shakespeare, can you still recite a little Shakespeare? I won't make you do it. And even, my sister says this, I don't know when he started doing this, reading Playboy magazine because some of the writing actually was very good. I don't know. Indubitably was one of the words he would use when you'd give him a question or talk about a heavy topic. That was one of his best words. And I started to list the teachers that he worked and socialized with, and I realized it was just too big to even cover this page. But I like the ones with stars because those are people who were his students and then became fellow teachers. But we have the quotes there that they weren't just teachers, they weren't just teaching a subject, they were really teaching life skills. And I mentioned Dick Humpert there, we'll hear about him again later. We all remember Donna Selman, Chuck Ecker, who became superintendent of schools and had been a student and a co-worker. And that's a typical Mike shot with his head back, laughing. I don't know who that teacher is. Does anybody know? Elizabeth Harrison. And he directed plays. He directed them right here, so I had the privilege of being in a play or two here that he directed. As did Dave Helfrich, who we will run into again, who did his eulogy. But Dave and I were both the year before we didn't get him because he retired the year before we had him. He did the bicentennial plays in 1964. There were plays, site-situated plays at different locations in town. So there was one at City Hall to recall things from the founding of the city, others in locations, and he organized and directed all those plays. And of course, plays at Westminster High School. And the Key Club Capers. Who was in any of the Key Club Capers? Oh, we got some Key Club Caperers. So who would like to speak at all about any of their drama experiences? We have a microphone that can come running around. Let's say I saw Mal's hand. And Sue Bloom did some drama with him. Oh, she's getting the mic. I just know, we'll get you. Everyone that worked learned to enunciate and project. And Robin Riddington told us the vocal drills, which I don't remember doing, but I wasn't in school. Mimo, 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 fa-da-da-da-da. There comes the mic. Give it to Susan, maybe, or Mal.
I think I was in 3 different programs that he gave. There was one where I was a hillbilly girl. I can't even remember the name of the play, but I had to speak with a southern drawl. And I was Mary in the Christmas play. And then we used to have a class book night where classmates would walk out of a big yearbook on the stage and people would talk about them as they came through. I think my class of 66 was the last one that did that. But he was just a delight, and he was in Kiwanis Club with my husband, and Cal would pick him up and take him to Kiwanis meetings and take him home. He's a great guy.
Mel, did you want to speak about drama?
But about Key Club, and I was a member of Key Club, and often had to, in the position I had to make reports to Mike, and was forever late with those, and he would call me at home and say, Melvin, where is this report? And on several occasions I had said, well, I intended to have it to you by such and such, and he would quote that famous line, Melvin, the road to hell was paved with good intentions.
Yep. And this is a quote we had from Dick Meyerly. We do have forms over there if you want to record a specific memory. We have a book where we collected some items from the 2010 event, so please add your own memories, such as Dick's here. And I think I have a stagehand shot. So that's back as far as 1944, the stage crew. So in addition to directing the play, he usually coached the stage crew, and often they were some of the Key Club people as well. So he led the Key Club from 51 until his retirement in 71. The things I knew about Key Club were pretty faint, but I remember hearing about the conventions. There was a convention, and I don't know where they went, but I know on more than one occasion he had to sleep on the floor outside the door of the rooms so that everybody stayed in their rooms. And there were some violators, obviously. Okay. And the Key Club capers, today we would call that a follies, that the guys were often dressed up as women, and again, that's what I know. There's some neat pictures back there of people also oddly dressed up, but I think they're older than high school people, so it looks more like a Kiwanis drama or lack of drama event that he coached. Oops. And so, yes, he was active in Kiwanis, and again, I don't have any specifics, except that I know he was greatly appreciated, and this was just their appreciation plaque from 71 for all he'd done with Key Club. But he stayed active with Kiwanis. His Kiwanis jacket is back there. Does anybody want to say something particular about his Kiwanis adventures? Yep, got one over there.
I can speak louder. My name is Dominique Wilson. I was a 2009 Winters Mill graduate that went to Career Tech under Miss Catherine, oh man, she would kill me. Miss Catherine Spencer. And if it wasn't for the Kiwanis Club, I mean, I was an African-American family that came from really little to nothing. And based off of my work at Career Tech, I'm pretty sure Mr. Humbert and his just, influence helped me actually get a $500 scholarship from Kiwanis to go to Carroll Community College. And from there, even with his influence on just education period, his notice to diction, his notice to you being the biggest of himself. He's probably worked with Karen Kazanton, that was a choral director over there at Winters Mill for a certain stem of time. And so that was my choral director, and she got a lot of those choir, rituals, for lack of a better term. But the many mumbling mice are making midnight music in the moonlight. That's a big one, and getting it on key and actually doing things like that. Those things solidified me as a Carroll County Public School graduate. And I'm very grateful to him and the Kiwanis. because Lord knows we wasn't going to go to college and we had no money. So now that, you know, the Lord blessed us with that ability, if it wasn't for that, I just, you know, I'm just deeply extending my condolences, but thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Yes. And as I said, he retired in 1971. I think the quote was, "I'm not moving again." So he didn't come to, he was at events and shows at the new school, but he did not. But he was well known. Apparently he received something in the mail that looked not unlike this, with just a picture of him and the city and zip code. So it got delivered. Yeah, we have the post office down here. Yay, Joe. I'm not sure they can do that today. Okay, he was active with the Heart Association and was roasted by the Heart Association, not once, but twice, that they did a roast, and I think both times he had Ernest Thompson come in. There we go. Ernest Thompson was his perhaps most well-known student, since he was an Oscar-winning playwright. But obviously touched his life forever. But again, Ernest isn't the only one who would call and talk for an hour on the phone with him, get counsel, or just visit. But we have other writers, as well as doctors, lawyers, and I think everything but an Indian chief. Here's one of his last, that's from his last class. Linda was in 1971, but she credits him again with making her write and finding herself and her direction. And this is some more out of our memories. A couple more writers, and then Mildred Shipley, who was a teacher. And more than, I'm going to say, most of you are going to say he's the one that prepared you for college. Yep. I started listing the friends and realized, again, that was futile when I saw his Christmas cards. We have Christmas cards and postcards from all over the world. Countless weddings, family reunions, class reunions. And after retirement, he claimed that he had the most well-traveled steaks, because he would take it out in the morning, and by noon he had the invitation for dinner, and he'd put the steak back in the freezer, and he'd be out to dinner. Anybody that would drive him somewhere could usually get him as a date, and he'd go on an adventure of whatever it might be. My sister Sarah tells the story that in her college years, they ran around together a lot. She liked art and music and drama just as he did, and she had a car. And they would go into Baltimore or Washington to have dinner and see a play. And I did that later in his time as well. So he was a wonderful companion. Oh yes, and Sarah tells the story. Sarah had her junior year abroad in France and then had a job where she traveled. And she met him once in London. They met at the Ritz, and she got there first and went up to the desk and found out he wasn't there yet. And she said, "Well, I'm his wife, I'll wait in the lobby." And they all looked a little askance. And when he came, they went into the bar to have a drink, and they got thrown out. He didn't have his tie on. Oh, the other with the family reunions, I have a memory. We have cousins who come down to our annual family reunion, and they come down on their motorcycle. And they became friends of Mike's and would actually stay at his house overnight on the weekend of the reunion. And then one day he needed to leave our party and go to the Brysons out on Bell Road, or Rockland, where they had a party, and Jay took him on the motorcycle. He probably learned that love of theater in New York. He worked behind the scenes. He found some back doors opportunities when he was in New York in school, and he would go up at least twice a year to New York, usually on the train, and then went to London. So he'd usually see the shows that were coming out first in London, and then he'd come back and see them again in New York or even Baltimore. There's a postcard back there that he sent to the church where he said, "I know now where all Lutherans go at the end." He was in Tahiti and Bora Bora. These are a few of his travels, and that's thanks to a recap from Hermine. So he did the Orient Express. He was in Tahiti, he was in China, some of it by cruises, some of it by train. So he traveled the world. And he had a mask collection. We think most of these masks he didn't actually gather. We think he gathered a few, and then other people started bringing him masks. But it's a pretty extensive collection. This is where it is hanging now at my mother's house. There's some pictures back there of it hanging at his house. So he was raised a Methodist. He came to Grace Church because Pastor Paul Wilson Quay had very literary and extensive sermons. These were not the 7-minute sermons that we expect today. They were complicated, and he loved it. He directed plays here, and he was a faithful member. At 11 o'clock, he was in, where'd I put those words? He was in the 4th row, 5th seat, watching. And he loved the organ music, and he went to some other concerts by the organists that we had late in his years, but he also loved the new music. And Monty Leister, Ed Leister's son, at his funeral actually wrote a tribute to him, and the chorus is, "In the picture painted in my mind, the 4th row in the 5th seat, a constant inspiration, smiling right back at me." And Monty was not playing the organ or the piano. He was playing the guitar and singing modern music, praise music, and Mike loved that just as much as he did the organ music. 7 terms on church council, usually as the secretary, and that was before computers, so we have handwritten minutes that he took all those years. The other music that we had here, this is a little advertisement, was the brass, especially at Easter. And Dick Humbert, a fellow teacher, although Dick was in the elementary school, but Dick was a member here, and Dick would put together the music to accompany Easter and other special occasions, and Dick played at his funeral. There is a memorial concert for Dick Humbert in this room Sunday at 3. There's some flyers in the back about that. So on August 2nd of 2010, we held an event at the Historical Society, and some of you were there. We had speakers every half hour throughout the afternoon. We dedicated the room to Mike Eaton. It's on the 3rd floor. It's a small bedroom that was his room for all those years that he was at Cockey's, which was over 30 years. That event was recorded, and there are DVDs of that available. I considered putting in excerpts from that, but I thought the technology was more than I could deal with, of adding videos. But we had former teachers. I remember Mrs. Selman spoke, and of course Jim Head. He and Jim were very, very constant companions in the later years of his life. So up there he has a room of his own, and that's generally what it looks like, which is, to the best of our ability, what it looked like when he had it. So any memorials, we're gathering things, a lot of the things in the back came from there, and we'll go back to there. So that's where the set of cards is, and some other framed writings about him. We're going to take the bed out and put round table in there so that you can actually sit and look at the things. And then as part of that event, we started the Mike Eaton Scholarship. So there is a scholarship in memory of Mike Eaton that is given at Westminster High School every year. The students to win it have to write an essay about their most memorable teacher. And it's been a really fun experience, number one, to read about some of the really good teachers that these students have had. 90% of them are Westminster High School teachers, but we also have career and tech teachers, and we have parents and Sunday school teachers and 4th grade teachers, so there's no criteria regarding that. The school has been very supportive of it. We actually give that award at the awards ceremony, graduation time in the school. So it's not the evening one, it's in the school, and they'll get the teacher there. And we call up the student and the teacher. We have a bell that we give to the teacher. So we give that to the student who then gives it to the teacher. And it's engraved with all their names. But I think for the teachers, I don't know any of you out there that are teachers, it has to be a little bit thankless that you work so hard and there they go, they're gone. So to get an essay or two where somebody took the time to write how much they appreciate your effort and your work.
Sometimes we're happy when they're gone.
I heard that. So this was the first year that we gave the award, and I especially like this. In the lower picture, the teacher in the center is Katie Neflin. Who knows who Katie Neflin is now? Yeah, she's the principal. So she was one of the first winners of the Mike Eaton Scholarship writings. So she was one of the first two, and she's now the principal at Westminster High. And that's the whole list. There's a hard copy list on the table in the back. But we've given it all those years, and some of them have a parent or a grandparent who knew Mr. Eaton, and they'll put that in the writing. The scholarship fund is now maintained at the Community Foundation of Carroll County, which is really nice. They have a scholarship portal, so we don't have to worry about disseminating the information. If the students go on and are in Westminster High, they'll get that scholarship as one of the options of what they can apply for. So it's electronic, but we get a lot more applications now than we did because of that. So I was going to wrap with, these are the words that David Helfrich wrote and gave at Mr. Eaton's funeral, and I think they're very appropriate. And you'll see, he would open his mouth and roll back his head and laugh from the very core of his being. Mike, you see, taught us not to take ourselves too seriously. He realized that laughter sometimes can cleanse the soul. Through him, we learned about love, love of self, love of others, and love of God. There was not a more graceful person, and he really was graceful. And he lived his life with as much love and grace, and this world would be a better place if we all lived our lives with that much love and grace. So, other sharings, comments, questions, thoughts? How'd I do? No.
Question on the play that you said Hillbilly Girl. Was it Little Abner, by any chance? The lady that was in the play? I'm sorry.
No, actually, I found the script to Hillbilly Girl, I think.
Okay, it's called
if you want me to find it. It's a handwritten script. Or typed.
I have a mic on this side too.
I did just want to mention that I retired from Westminster High School just 3 years ago, but for a while I was the English department chair, and the English department also gives a Mike Eaton Award for a student who has excelled in both English and the drama program.
And I appreciate that that still happens. That's cool. There is a life-size Mike Eaton now in the room at the Historical Society. We didn't bring that along.
I had Mike Eaton for senior English, and just wanted to say that my first 2 quarters of college English were virtual repeats of what we learned in high school.
We got one here, Steve. Go ahead,
Hi. My brother, who was a college professor here for 34 years and was also a student of Mike Eaton's, has said many times that the students that he saw were just not as prepared as he was when he entered college. And he credited Mike Eaton for that always. He and Kirby Talley always get together and discuss how wonderful Mike Eaton was and how they visited him when he was older, when he was living in the Thelma house.
Yeah, I went there and saw many people coming through.
It's me again. I do have a question. Were there any, I guess, I would say suggestions or influences, but at that time, I guess, what, 1960 something you said? As we know, segregation already kind of passed that, and Robert Moulton Elementary School was the integrated school. So I wanted to know his impact, or I guess friendship or camaraderie with other African American teachers at the time, or any other affluent African Americans at the time.
The desegregation of the schools, and Kevin can speak to that, was in 64, 65. And I know that Mrs. Harris came over, and I had her for homeroom, and Kevin and I both had her for typing, and she had come from Robert Moulton.
I think at that time, from research I've done, she was the only African American on staff besides one of the custodians at that time.
Who was the name of the custodian? Y'all gotta know who cleaned up the school now.
Levere, but I can't think of his last name.
Levere. I don't remember. Owens? I thought Howard was in was elementary school. Mr. Howard was in 1st and 2nd grade in my memory.
Was it Ben Foster, was it?
Oh, no.
I can attest to the fact that my husband, Thomas Miller, was a math teacher at West Middle School and started right after college. And he had the first black student, Michael Brill was his name, and Michael went on to become a phys ed teacher himself. So that was 1959.
Wow.
That was the first student. It was West Middle School that he went to.
You said it. Can you repeat the name again? I'm sorry.
Can you repeat the name? What was that name again?
Mike Squirrel. And then he went down and taught at Franklin, and he just passed away not too long ago, I believe. 65.
Right here, Steve, with the orange yellow shirt. If you wait for the mic.
I graduated in '64, and I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. Went to Towson, and the first professor I had for English was famous for failing everyone. If you took his class, he loved to take your writing, stand up in front of the class, and rip it to shreds. I got a B from him, thanks to Mike Eaton, and went on to become an English teacher, thanks to Mike Eaton.
I think we'll take one more, and then Caroline, you'll be around at the table to show some folks everything and answer other questions.
Yes.
Okay, one more. Thanks.
I'd like to follow up on that last comment. In my first year of college English, we were given an assignment to write a thesis, and I had been pretty good at writing under Mike Eaton. When the grades were handed back, when the papers were handed back, the professor, I looked at mine and I had a D-, and I thought, oh man. But the professor started writing on the chalkboard the outcome, and he had A's 0, B's 1, C's 0, D's 2, F's 23. And suddenly I felt pretty good.
Guess so. This portrait was done by David Corbin, and it was an event, it was an anniversary with the county, I believe, where they had 50 prominent residents from the county who had portraits done. And Mike Eaton was done along with the bankers and the elected officials and whomever, but Mike was also chosen for that group.
Can we have another big round of applause?